Good evening. Welcome to Wednesday, October 16th, 2024 Planning Commission regular meeting. My name is Tamara Blake Wallace. I'm the Planning Commission Administrator. This meeting tonight will be held as a hybrid meeting, allowing for both virtual and in-person participation. I will pass the meeting over to Lisa, our admin aide, to go over the etiquette for tonight's meeting.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Shepard, the Administrative Aide in Planning and Zoning, and I will be your Zoom moderator this evening. This meeting is being recorded on video and audio for record-keeping purposes. For those attending virtually via Zoom, please keep yourself muted to ensure no interruptions to the evening. If you are asked to speak and you are attending with audio only by telephone, you can mute and unmute using the phone's mute button or by pressing *6 on the keypad. If you are attending virtually on a computer or smart device, you can mute and unmute using the microphone or the mute button on the Zoom toolbar or by using keyboard shortcuts. Press Alt-A on a Windows device or Command-Shift-A on a Mac. When the floor is opened for public comment or questions, those attending in person will be asked to speak first, and then those attending virtually. If speaking, please identify yourself for the record first, then speak. If attending by telephone and you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please press *9 on the touchpad to raise your hand, and you will be called upon in turn at the appropriate time. If you are attending virtually and wish to ask a question or make a comment, raise your Zoom hand and you will be called upon. Please say your name every time you speak for the benefit of those calling in who cannot see you. Finally, please use the Zoom chat to indicate if there appear to be technical difficulties or you cannot hear the meeting audio, and we will work expeditiously to correct any issues. Please refrain from placing comments or questions in the Zoom chat, as not all in attendance at the public meeting can see those communications.
Thank you, Lisa. I will turn the meeting over to our chairman to call the meeting to order.
Good evening. I'm John Toohey, Chairman of the Calvert County Planning Commission. This meeting is officially called to order. I'll take attendance to determine a quorum. Commissioner Wilson Freeland.
Here.
Commissioner Christopher Gadway.
Present.
Commissioner Richard Holler.
Here.
Commissioner Greg Kernan.
Here.
Commissioner James McQueen.
Here. Commissioner
Dale Weems.
Here.
Thank you very much. We have everybody here. If you'd all stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to item number 3, action on the proposed agenda.
Motion to approve this evening's agenda.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Kernan,
Second.
and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Stands approved.
Item number 4, action on the proposed summary of actions. Item 4A, September 18th, the 2024, September 18th, 2024 PC regular meeting.
We have the summary of actions. Any comments, corrections?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve,
Second.
and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Stands approved.
We will now have recognitions of persons attending the meeting. From Planning and Zoning, we have Mary Beth Cook, Director, Jason Brinkley, Deputy Director of Planning, Judy Makel, Deputy Director of Zoning, Tay Harris, Long Range Planner, Rachel O'Shea, Zoning Planner, Will Hager, Planner 3. We have Colleen Brummett, Environmental Planner 2. Joining us online is Jay Cousineau, Planner 2. And with us tonight also is Kat Lockwood, Planner 1. From Park and Rec, we have Bob Brannon, Director. We have Amanda Stillwagon, Park and Safety Division Chief, and Stephanie Sperling, Park Planner. Also with us tonight, we have Becky Parkinson serving as our Planning Commission Clerk, And serving as our legal counsel, John Mattingly. Okay, that brings us to item 6, major subdivisions for final review and action. We do not have any on the agenda today. Item 7, applications for site plan review and action. We do not have any on the agenda tonight. And major subdivision applications for preliminary review and action. We do not have any for tonight. That brings us to item number 9, long-range planning. It's the Prince Frederick Town Center Master Plan update.
Good evening. I'm Tay Harris. I'm the long-range planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning, and Kathleen Lockwood is here. She's a planner too with the Department of Planning and Zoning.
Good evening, ladies.
Good evening.
So tonight I'm here to give you an update on the Prince Frederick Town Center Master Plan update. Background: on June 26, 2024, the Planning Commission directed staff to distribute the Prince Frederick Town Center Master Plan June 2024 draft to agencies, adjoining jurisdictions, departments, and the public for a 90-day comment period concluding on September 25th, 2024. Discussion. The Prince Frederick Town Center Master Plan June 2024 draft was distributed to the appropriate agencies and departments required under the Maryland Annotated Code Land Use Article 3-203. The draft was also posted to the Prince Frederick Town Center Master Plan and Zoning Update web pages. The public comment period was announced via press release, social media, and through the county's subscription-based notification email system, Notify Me. During the comment period, 5 agencies and 11 individuals submitted feedback on the draft plan. Additionally, staff has been updating the plan to address any errors or inconsistencies found. Staff has also engaged in ongoing discussions with the Economic Development and Community Resources Departments regarding Main Street. Conclusion. Staff is requesting the Planning Commission to provide comments and feedback on the Prince Frederick Town Center Master Plan June 2024 draft and the comments received. Staff intends to update the current draft accordingly with a tentative public hearing scheduled for the Planning Commission meeting on December 18th, 2024. We understand that adjustments may be necessary based on public comments and would appreciate your feedback. Our goal is to hold a public hearing in December with the aim of receiving a recommendation for adoption. Any questions or feedback?
Gentlemen, we have feedback, comments? Commissioner Gadway, you can start,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
so there's no action by us being taken tonight. This is just questions and comments that we have to you guys tonight, correct? Okay. I would like to start off by commending the members of the public for the depth that they went into on some of the comments. I'm glad we're not taking any action on it tonight because I got a lot more homework to do myself. There's a lot to unpack, but when you guys go through public comments, do you guys automatically look at those and take those into consideration and make the adjustments if you feel, if they're deemed appropriate, for lack of a better term?
Yes.
Okay,
May I also add?
please.
Okay, so we also coordinate with department leaders and also subject matter leaders to make sure that any changes that we're making to accommodate public comment is consistent with other departments' goals and obviously consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Right. Because some of the comments that I saw were relating to protection of waterways and watersheds and this and that, and it sounded and looked like some of the protections in the originals were coming out. And I'm hoping that that was maybe an oversight and those watershed protections would stay in place.
Okay.
And also, and I asked Mary Beth this question earlier, in one of the documents, it says that Maryland 2-4 is scheduled, or the state has the ability to take 2-4 into a 6-lane divided highway from north of Stokely to south of 765A. I didn't know which one 765A was until tonight, and it's believed to be the south end of Main Street down by Kenmar. I believe that that's what it sounds like.
Okay,
But it,
we can be more explanatory, just to clarify if you'd like.
right, yeah,
Okay.
please. Gonna go to somebody else?
No, you keep,
You're on a
no,
roll.
keep working. Keep working, buddy, you're doing great.
Like I said, there's just a lot to unpack here, and I just wanted to make sure that a lot of the citizen comments were received by you guys as well. I mean, obviously, they go to you guys. But, you know, good stuff so far, as long as we're addressing those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So, following up on Commissioner Gadway's comments, have you guys prepared for us your response to the public comments, whether they are viable and you intend to insert them in the document or not?
So we're in the process of evaluating all of the comments, meeting with other staff and departments. And where we can, we will accommodate the comments. And so what we are doing is we're gonna have a text-only track changes, and there will be comments to the side explaining where those revisions came from, if it was a result of a public comment or a comment from one of the departments in the county.
So let me say that I found the folks that used the track changes format, I found that very helpful. It kept me from having to go back and forth. So if you have some way to make that a standard, that would be fantastic.
We can do that.
On the agency comments, I noticed that Public Works, on at least 8 occasions, made the comment that they need further discussion with you guys. Has that discussion taken place?
No, we wanted to wait until we received feedback from you all tonight before we met with the Department of Public Works.
So, you know, I find it kind of tough to give you feedback without knowing what the discussion was that created the comment.
The questions, yeah.
Well, you'll notice there are a lot of comments regarding the transportation chapter. So we do need to work that out, take into consideration the comments, but also meet with the department. So we don't have anything to present to you tonight, but we will by December 18th for the public hearing.
So, let's talk about the public hearing for a second. When will you revise the draft to incorporate the comments that you've received? When will that happen?
By no later than the date that we must upload it to submit to you for the December 18th meeting. So that is the first Friday in December, I believe. I'd have to look at a calendar.
So, where I'm going with this is, that really doesn't give the public a lot of opportunity to comment on a revised draft.
Mhm.
So the sooner you get that out there, the better. 30 days in advance would be
okay.
great if that's possible.
Commissioner Freeland, I have a question for you. Do we think it might be better to put that up in December and then hold a hearing in January, where people have time to review it and write?
That's a question that you can pose for the commission. I think I would be in favor of that. I mean, it keeps,
I can't make
gives
that.
staff the opportunity to compile it all,
Yeah,
and
give
then
us more
gives
information
the
too.
public
Yeah, more time,
opportunity
yeah.
to review it.
May I ask a question regarding that? If the meeting were to be held on December 18th, what is the next step for the plan after that?
Well, if you were to give, I mean, there's a few different options, but the planning commission could give a recommendation to the BOCC saying they, they think the plan is, or they deem the plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Or you could you could give comments to staff if you needed additional information and ask us to go investigate and then bring it back to you. Or you can approve, or you could tell us, or you could make your recommendations with conditions, changes to the plan.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Personally, I think more time, this is the better way to go. I mean, it gives them more time to pull the information together, gives the public comments, to be addressed, and gives everybody the information they need to be able to make an educated decision.
I would prefer to be able to see the agency comments prior to the public hearing. I think the public deserves to see those
As well.
at least a month in advance as well.
So that would be November 18th? Using this
Or-
December date.
Or having the agency comments due on time in December, early December, published, and then we address it at the January meeting,
January.
push the public hearing to January.
I personally like the latter scenario. Well, that gives us more time to coordinate with staff and really vet through the comments. So,
What's required in order to make that change?
what's required to make what change?
To move the public hearing back to January and make sure we have,
We just schedule it
okay.
a month later. And then we make sure that we do all the public outreach that's required. you know.
I need to ask a question of Mr. Mattingly.
Yes,
Are we in the right place to do this?
absolutely. The actual date hasn't been advertised yet, correct?
No, that's our tentative date. That's why
Yeah,
we
so,
wanted to
yeah.
let you know that was our
Yeah,
date.
so
we do
the
not need
agenda.
a motion to bring this about, or
No, I mean, you can do it by consent if everyone's on board, but really, this is a procedural matter, it's not substantive. So if you wanted to do a motion to push it back to a date certain, that's fine. But you could, at the end of this, I'm assuming they're gonna be asking for direction. At that point, you would probably tell them, yes, we'd like an extra 30, 60, whatever days to review the items submitted by the public.
Thank you.
thank you, sir.
I would like to see the rest of the department comments, as Commissioner Freeland brought up, no later than the beginning of December, so we could process them, ask questions about them at the December meeting, and the public could make comment on those as well, and then have public open discussion in January.
Perfect.
Okay.
Do we have consensus? Any objections to this? We're all happy? Okay, wonderful.
May I add before, I'm not trying to jump the gun here, but I do want to make sure that there is recognition for two comments that didn't make it into the public packet today. One was, from the the Division of Emergency Management. Kara Buckmaster worked with, our department, and updated the hazard risk assessment and summary for Prince Frederick, and they're gonna go ahead and keep that rolling for all the town centers, so that's nice coordination. We'd like to thank Kara and Amalia for working together to get that to us. And then also, there is a comment from Randy Volt that did not make it in. So we made sure you got it, but I would like the public and everyone else to know that we have it here and it counts and we're looking at it.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tay and Kat. That moves us on to item 10, items for discussion and/or action. Item 10A, Rebecca's Field, residue of parcel 19, building permit 2426065, impacts to steep slopes.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Colleen Brummett. I'm an environmental planner with Planning and Zoning, and I'm going to be presenting this building permit for the residue of parcel 19 in Rebecca's Field. The building permit was first submitted in June of 2024. Staff has reviewed the permit for compliance with the Calvert County zoning ordinance as amended and other county ordinances and regulations. See if I can do the buttons right. Maybe, maybe not. There we go. Okay. The property is located just outside of the Huntingtown Town Center with frontage on Cox Road. This is recorded as residue of parcel 19 from the Rebecca's Field subdivision. The property can be found on tax map 18, parcel 19. It's 19.66 acres total, and it is currently undeveloped. And then just the aerial where you can see the property location highlighted in blue. So the proposed development is a single-family home with a 2-car garage and a front porch, which would provide a total living area of about 4,300 square feet. I tried to highlight things so it'd be a little easier to see. So the house is the rectangular stuff kind of in a pink shade up at the top. Private well and septic, which are cut off in this image, but they're basically behind and to the left of the house. Driveway that is approximately 10 feet wide, which I've outlined here in red. Grading to install this driveway proposes to disturb about 2,200 square feet of slopes that are greater than 25%. These slopes are not part of a stream buffer. There is a stream and its associated buffer farther to the left, cut out of this image. The recorded plat for this property states that any and all impacts to steep slopes would need approval from the Planning Commission. And then I want to point out, based on the shape of this parcel, this is the only place it has frontage on Cox Road, so moving the driveway isn't really an option here. And then I gave us a zoomed in view so you can see a little bit better. Directional fencing is proposed to be installed along that limit of disturbance where the steep slopes are, so that's their sediment and erosion control measures for that. That fencing is in place prior to any grading, and it stays in place until after the fact when they get their final inspection and they're told they can take it out. And then slopes are immediately stabilized once final grade is achieved. So that's the long and short. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
This looks like about a 570-foot driveway, and it looks like only about 200 feet of it's affected. Is that the only area that they have to do the extra protection on, just that steep slope area?
There are sediment and erosion controls pretty much everywhere, all over this LOD.
Mhm.
They vary based on, so it's directional fencing where the slopes are. Let me see if I can go back a slide. So there's directional fencing where the slopes are. When you get up around the house, it's an earth dike. I don't know off the top of my head what it is between the slopes and the road. And it's not shown on this plan because again, it's so zoomed out. There is stormwater management, I'm gonna say kind of in the middle of the driveway if you're coming off Cox Road before you get to where the steep slopes start.
I saw that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I?
Sir?
Commissioners, this has a bit of a wrinkle. This is almost in the nature of a variance, but the way this statute or the ordinance is actually, or the zoning ordinance is worded, it states that if the Planning Commission or its designee approves that the slopes can be graded out to less than 25% for construction of roads to provide access to lots, then conditions 4 through 7 apply. So although I think that they're missing can be graded out to less than 25% for construction and adequate environmental protection is being provided, the actual motion here would be approval that the slopes can be graded out to less than 25%.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments, questions? Would we have a motion?
I would move to approve.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Gadway.
Second.
In a second, all those in favor?
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I did have another quick question, if I could.
Certainly.
On the second page, it says the recommendations, Health Department approved, Soil Conservation approved, DPW Engineering approved, P&Z Cultural Resources approved. But what does it mean when it says P&Z Zoning and P&Z Environmental Planner resubmit?
So when these permits come in,
Mhm.
Our permit system is a little more automated and digitized now than it used to be. So when they come in, the system kind of automatically assigns reviewers. It doesn't necessarily automatically come to me. Zoning is either Beth or Libby out of our office, and they're looking at it from the planning and zoning perspective. When it's something like this, where it's not a simple, everything's good to go, and there's a wrinkle in there, they usually rope me in. So that is, I think it's Libby, her resubmit is based on my resubmit, which is based on coming here and getting the approval from you guys to impact the slopes.
That makes a lot more sense, because
Yes.
the way my original question was, my original thought was they were asking the builder developer to resubmit.
It's resubmit the permit to, so when we're done here tonight, assuming that you approve, then the permit applicant is allowed to bring the permit back in once they have like the formal thing from you guys that says they are allowed to approve those slopes.
Got it. I
Once
understand.
that's done, then I can approve and Libby can approve, and then it can be issued.
I learned something new today, thank
There
you.
you go.
We all learned something new. Thank you for your questions, Commissioner. So we have a motion and a second in front of us. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Sorry, who did second that?
Mr.
Yeah,
Williams.
Dale
Thank you.
seconded.
Commissioner Weems? All righty.
All right,
Thank you so
you.
much, Colleen. We
Sure.
appreciate your help.
Thank you, Colleen. Item 10B, Planning Commission Work Session, the Howling Point Park Master Plan Update.
Hi, good evening. Amanda Stillwagon, Park and Safety Division Chief for Parks and Recreation. We are here tonight to present to you the updated master plan for Halloween Point Park. In the fall of 2023, the Department of Parks and Recreation contracted Murphy and Dittenhofer Architects to update the Halloween Point Park master plan. Stephanie Tincher is the architect that we've been working with on this project. So we are going to go through our presentation with you, and then at the end, we can answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Okay, so as Amanda stated, our purpose here tonight is to present to you our final master plan update for the Halloween Point for Halloween Point Park. And
It was the down arrow and not the up arrow, which really threw me off. I don't know if that helps you. There we go.
thank you. Okay, so project location, we're in the middle of Calvert County along Halloween Point Road, about halfway between Route 2 and the Patuxent River, on the north side of 231. So Halloween Point Park, as it exists today, houses quite a few amenities that are used by the public. What you'll notice that's distinctive in this slide that is of note is that while the Parks and Rec maintains a number of facilities in this park as well as adjacent properties, the master plan is limited to addressing the amenities that are owned by the Board of County Commissions in Calvert County. So you'll see the highlighted portion in green is the portion that's owned by Calvert County. The portion that's in grayscale within that triangle zone is leased and is used by Parks and Rec, but is not part of this master plan study, as it is not owned by the Board of County Commissioners. The park, as of today, houses a number of great amenities that the community makes good use of. If we start from Halloween Point Road and moving north through the park, there is the tennis/pickleball courts to the right-hand side, a basketball court. Passing around, we've got a series of baseball and softball fields. The brand-new pickleball courts that have just been completed within the past couple months are on the north side of the park. The playground, and then as we move around to the west side of the park, we've got the soccer fields and the multi-use fields, which are used both by football teams and soccer teams of the community throughout the year. Recently completed within the park on the west side of the park, the Parks and Rec has recently resurfaced and paved parking over on the west side of the park, as well as provided pedestrian crossing strips to allow for safety as people come and go from different games and throughout the day for the park. There are also some restrooms that were recently completed that exist in the center of the park by the baseball fields, as well as over by the multi-use football and soccer fields. So the most recent master plan that's been done for this park was back in 1998, so it's quite dated. The master plan as it exists today does not include a lot of the amenities that have been brought to bear over the past 20 years. So sort of two-prong approach for this master plan was, one, just to provide a document that brings up to date what does the park house today, what are the amenities that it houses today, what are the current maintenance needs for the park today as it stands, and then also to look to the future for the next 20 years. What do the citizens of Calvert County want? What do they need? What's going to make this a destination park, for the next 15 to 20 years? What's going to make it a place that people are really excited to go to and host events, and for sporting teams to come to, and to host different matches and games for their uses. So to that end, Parks and Rec solicited input from residents via a survey back in the fall of 2023. We got 2,500 responses to that survey, which really indicated to us that people care about this park. They're interested in this park, and they want to see things happen in this park, and they want to say what's going to happen in this park, and they want to have input into what's going to happen. So we really took that to heart. We spent a lot of time analyzing the data from those responses and trying to understand what were the things that were important to people that responded, and really used those to create the guidance that the master plan is going to provide for how the park could develop over the next 15 to 20 years. So one of the things, just sort of a demographic highlight kind of thing that we started with is who visits the park, and what do they really think of the park. So most of the folks that visit the park are Calvert County residents. It sort of goes without saying. Most folks visit pretty frequently, either weekly or monthly. The primary reason people come to this park in particular is the playgrounds for the kids and for youth sports. Football, soccer, baseball and softball were the top 3 sports that people come. There's also lacrosse and field hockey and those other sports as well. But that's really why people come to this park. So things that people identified as what do they want to see in this park? What needs the most improvement? One of the largest responses we got was the fields. And so the fields right now are all Bermuda grass fields that have to be reseeded every year. It's a very large maintenance line item for the budget for Parks and Rec every year to do, and they deteriorate quickly. And I think, I don't remember who pointed it out, but as seasons increase, as the weather stays warmer for longer, the fields get used for longer throughout the year. They don't get those breaks throughout the year that would allow the seeds to rest, or the fields to rest and be reseeded in time. So there's really a strong need to turn these fields into synthetic turf fields so that they're more usable year-round. They provide a better playing surface for the kids, a safer playing surface for the kids. And so that's really one of the #1 items that people identified is those synthetic turf fields. The other thing that people really talked about a lot in a couple different ways was paved trails. And the paved trails can serve a couple different functions. One is to provide a safe access from the parking lots through the park to the various different amenities. Parking, if you're going to park over on the east side of the park and need to get to one of the softball fields that's in the more interior of the park, you're going to want a safe way to do that. You're going to want an ADA accessible way to do that. And just, so that you don't have to be walking through the parking lot to get to these different amenities. The other thing is, just basic use of the trails on a daily basis for exercise, for recreation, for things like that. So getting those paved trails along with the synthetic turf fields was really, at the top 2 things that people wanted to see. So good news is one of the things that came out of the survey is that people consider the park safe. So that's great. So people feel comfortable being here. They want to come. They feel safe being there. They just need to see some upgrades to it. There were some recent traffic patterns that were installed in 2023. Most people agreed that those were good things. They were safe, they were necessary, and people feel comfortable using them. So we were happy to hear that. So in our recommendations in our full report, we looked at 2 different things. One is the base scope of work, which is sort of the things that are assumed that are going to be done every year and that will be included in the budget for Parks and Rec, and that's the maintenance of the existing facilities. That's, you know, reseeding the fields, making sure the playground equipment is safe, making sure the bathrooms are up to date and in working order, making sure that the, you know, the surface paving is kept current, things like that. So that's in the base scope of work, and that's assumed to be done. The proposed scope of work, we really went back to all that data that we got from the survey, from the 2023 fall survey, and really looked at what do people want to see in this park. And again, back to those paved trails, people want to see those paved trails for safety, for ADA access, to allow, you know, people of all different abilities and ages to move throughout the park safely. And then we're gonna go on our last slide here. We're not. Nope, we're not going to. Yes. All right. Good. So the final slide, this is sort of our, you know, culmination of everything that we learned from that survey and what do people want to see. And here's our recommendations for where to put those things that they want to see. So you'll see as the blue line snaking around, that's our idea of where all those ADA accessible trails are going to go. Other amenities that people wanted to see were, you know, more pavilions, more playgrounds. So we've got a couple different locations identified for those. We've got located at the softball and baseball parks. We've got the benches for the kids to, you know, put down their stuff, things like that. We've got a possible basketball court expansion happening in the existing location right now. There's just the one court. Our proposal is to expand it into 2. And you can see in the football fields and the soccer fields on the top west side of the plan, converting those fields to synthetic. So I won't go through every single one, but if you go through the report, this really, you know, sort of brings to bear everything that we understood that the county wanted to see in their park going forward. Any questions?
Commissioners, questions?
I see no mention of concession stand.
Yeah, so what we've proposed, and this was brought to bear by what we learned in the report. People want to see food trucks, right? So, and they want to see a variety of different food options coming in. So rather than providing a permanent concession stand, which would have, you know, basically a fixed menu, would require a lot of maintenance by the county, would require a lot of dollars to go into that every year to maintain it, to keep it up, to staff it. And, you know, bringing that into, you know, marrying that with what we're hearing from the survey, people wanted to see food trucks. So in our, you know, our recommendations, we provide 2 concrete pads for the food trucks with space for picnic tables, and that way, if you're having an event for, you know, for a football game or a soccer game, you can bring in a food truck that suits the desires of those folks. Let's say you're having a family gathering and you're renting out one of the pavilions, and you've got, you know, a birthday party for a 5-year-old that you've rented out this pavilion for. You're gonna want a different kind of food there. You're gonna want the cake pops and the ice cream, so you can bring in a food truck for that. So the idea is that it's, you know, it's infrastructure that allows the users of the park to cater that park amenity to their needs on a daily basis.
So would Parks and Recreation contract with the food truck vendors?
So we currently have a list of approved vendors that any user group can pick from. And so that is, those are the only vendors that are approved to go in the parks currently. So if you had a user group that was holding an event, they would reach out to us, and then we would give them that approved list, and they can pick from one of the vendors that is on there.
And do you guys have any input as to what is sold? I've heard complaints from folks about the price of the food trucks.
Yeah, we do, and so I think that that's been a learning curve too, is just kind of getting the food trucks that fit the right event. So, you know, if you have t-ball games or baseball games going on, most kids don't want a crab cake sandwich. So it's bringing in that vendor that can get hot dogs and burgers and things like that. We do have some of the organizations too, that they'll sell some, you know, small treats like bag chips or waters, things like that as well.
And do you gain any income from the food truck vendors?
I can't answer that,
Bob's
Bob.
got the answer. Bob's got the answer.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bob Brennan, Director of Parks and Recreation. So a few things. One, historically, we've had concession stands, and we've lost revenue year in and year out. So we then went to a contract process where we tried to contract them out to vendors. Same thing happened. Our last vendor ended up cutting short, and then we couldn't get any other bids because they were losing money as well. So the mobile food vendors, we keep up an approved list, but anyone can become an approved mobile food vendor if they follow the application process. So we make sure they're in good standing with the state, they're licensed, they have peddler's license or what they need to have through the health department, things of that nature. They set their menu, but we do get a copy of their menu, we get a description of their vehicle, all of that in the package. The actual agencies, if they're having an event, they can pick their mobile food vendor. If they're not currently authorized, we can get them through the process. We do not solicit. We do not proactively go out and say, we would like this truck at Halloween Point Park on Saturday because there are a bunch of baseball games or football games. The organizations typically will do that if they'd like to see them out there. We do it for our special events, and we never put competition out there. So if we have a dessert truck, we'll get a savory food truck as well. But we don't suggest or advise. It's actually up to the mobile food vendor to reach out to us to say, I have an interest in supporting these activities. Howling Point's a perfect example. The most fields in the county for us in a park. And the last vendor, I can say the name, you'd all know it, she finally just said, I can't make money out here. Not even on a Saturday when this place is busting at the seams from tip to tail. They were losing money. So that's why we went to the mobile food vendor process, and they do pay us. We get a flat fee, so we get something. And that's the only way that they're permitted access to our parks.
Have the vendors been successful?
For certain events. So when you have your larger events like homecomings, or they come to our big county-wide events, they make money. Come to the Breezy Blast Off, come to the Superhero Sunday, they make money. But just on a Saturday when it's busy at the park, they're saying they're not making money. Too many people are either going out to lunch or bringing in picnic food or things of that nature. So that's why we went with the mobile food vendor with identifying spots that we could have vendors to support the larger events. But to have a concession stand, it's just, we lose money as Parks and Recreation.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
But yet, do you still charge, like on that particular Saturday where it's busting its seams and you can't get a vendor to come out, are you charging the vendor to come out and bring their truck there on that Saturday?
Yes, sir, but our fee's nominal. If it's a weekend, it's $50 flat fee for the truck to come.
Okay.
That's all they pay us, but we get something.
Okay.
And, but again, they're not generating a revenue that makes it worth their
Gotcha.
while.
All right, thank you.
Were the vendors, when a vendor operated the concession stands,
Yes, sir.
did they pay a fee?
Yeah, well, we bid it out by contract, and yes, sir, they had
Okay.
to be awarded through the procurement process. But again, it's a nominal fee relative to what we thought the income would be, but they just could not generate enough revenue.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
Any other questions?
I do. First and foremost, the 231 entrance directly at the bottom of the hill, when that traffic pattern was changed 2 years ago, I thought that was absolutely phenomenal. It was a great idea. The concept is great. We still have people coming out of the park, turning left, and we still have people going east on 231, turning left into the park. I know it's outside of your all's purview because it's a state road. There is an extra wide section right there. I would like to have the county, I would like to ask the county to consider a soft median there
Yeah.
to where, and or extend,
So we've looked
The turn.
into, I don't know what the proper term is, and I've seen them in other areas where they're almost like a divider. So what it would do is it would extend that lane, so it would prevent people, because the way that concrete kind of curb island is now, it's too easy to make
Around
that
it, yeah.
left.
right.
If we extended that. So we have had conversations with Public Works about that and how we go about that process. And with it being state highway, then there would be
Right.
some submittals and permits involved.
Right, and, building a better park brings more people. With more people brings more traffic. With more traffic brings more congestion. And sadly, as we've seen over the recent days, brings more fatalities. So I think it's paramount that the county and the state work together to make sure people are coming in and out of the park properly. However that ends up working out, better signage in the park. I think that part's paramount, okay, for the safety of everybody. I know I was sitting for 2.5 hours in Charles County waiting to get into Calvert last night because of an accident just down the street from the park. And a lot of that can be helped with signage in the park as well.
Wayfinding is also a part of this master plan as well.
Yeah.
And when I say wayfinding, what we did is, we went through the park and basically went to every intersection and looked at it from the perspective of somebody that's never been to Calvert County. And explaining to them, like, when you're at certain intersections, so when you come into the main entrance of the park, you come to a four-way stop, where the maintenance shop is to your right, the baseball fields are to your left. And so we do have proposed signage, once this is adopted and approved, that hopefully we would be able to fund and start getting that signage up in the park.
Gotcha. Because one of the original concepts from 2022 was to have only westbound 231 traffic be able to turn into the park at the bottom of the hill.
Yes, they wanted it to be
And
entrance only,
it would have
yes.
been entrance only, and all the exit would have to go out the backside through the controlled intersections, per se.
Correct.
This,
Because it really, the way the traffic pattern is now is it's feeding you to Skipjack, where
Right.
the light is, because at Jib Sale, you can't make that left either.
right,
It's the forced right.
yeah. And so that was the benefit, is bringing them out at a traffic light, controlled intersection. And I think signage in the park can do a huge amount for that. You separate off that, turf fields. Huge debate on turf fields. As you said, there's expenses to maintaining natural fields. There is people that will make a higher argument that turf fields are more expensive to purchase and have a shorter lifespan than what is advertised and are more expensive to replace. To where it's actually cheaper in the long run to maintain actual grass natural fields. You mentioned safety. There's a lot of people that will argue out there also. A lot of the major league teams are going away from turf, going back to grass, because athletes, professional athletes, are having career-ending injuries on their ankles because on turf, the cleats and shoes don't have the ability to slide or move. Once that foot's planted, it can cause injuries. So, me personally, I'm just throwing it out there before the county goes into spending the huge amounts of money for converting turf fields. I hope that there's a good, strong debate over the safety of it, as well as the related costs associated with maintaining the grass versus going to turf. I've seen times where on a turf field in the middle of July, on a grass, on the edge of the field where it's grass, the heat area right there with the thermometer is 100 degrees. You go to the outfield of the baseball field or in the soccer field, and you stand there with a thermometer, and it's 117. So a 17-degree differential from the sideline to the middle of the field, that's something to consider as well. So,
Another big argument for the turf fields, though, too, is the expanded time you can play on them. So at Howling Point, we have a combination of warm and cool season grasses.
Right.
So we have Bermuda and we have tall fescue. Tall fescue will keep open all year. The Bermudas we have to close, because in the summer months, that is when we do the sprigging. So we sprig, we sand, we irrigate to get ready for that fall season.
Right.
We average anywhere from 25 to 28,000 reservations, field reservations, a season. And so it's hard to accommodate, because as you see, with the natural turf, you get wear. You get it in the goal mouth, you get it at particular parts of the field. And so that's where kind of the player safety comes in, with being able to maintain those natural turf fields. And we're forced to cancel sometimes because of rain and different things. And so that was a lot of the arguments behind folks, like you said, to have that really balanced conversation about weighing the pros and cons of if it's, the right direction to go.
Right.
And something else that had accompanied this survey is we had just completed the LPPRP. We had the new plan, which was adopted in 2022, and a big part of that process is stakeholder meetings, meeting with focus groups, and getting feedback from the users who are out there and on the fields.
Well, in closing, as my grandson played baseball last year, throughout Tri-County, actually 5 counties. I had the wonderful pleasure of visiting all the other surrounding counties' baseball fields, and I was utterly shocked at how much higher quality the Calvert County fields were than virtually any of the other counties around.
I appreciate that.
Anne Arundel, Charles, I mean.
My guys appreciate that,
You know,
yeah.
we were at a ball field in Charles, and I'm not trying to pick on them, but as I was sitting there, as the kids were running from third base to home, they were literally running up and down along the baseline. The baseline had at least 7 different elevations going down the baseline of at least 6 to 8 inches. They were literally running downhills and uphills trying to get to home plate. So Calvert County parks are great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Commissioners, questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the Howland Point Park Master Plan.
Second.
We have a motion, and we have a second. All those in favor?
Question.
Ooh, sorry.
We just need a consistency finding also, since recreation makes up part of the functional
And
plan
it's
of
planning
the
consistent with
comprehensive.
the Calvert County comprehensive plan as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And the second
Second
still
holds,
holds?
yes.
There we go. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? There we go, stands approved. Thank you so much for your help today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
should have asked for the hockey field, the hockey rink.
That brings us to 10C, Planning Commission Work Session, the Calvert County Zoning Ordinance Update.
Good evening, Commissioners. Rachel O'Shea, zoning planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning. With me is Will Hager, Planner 3. We're here this evening to give you an update on the zoning ordinance draft as we work toward public hearing. And Will take us through the slides.
Okay, thank you, Rachel, and good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
So we'll begin this presentation by briefly going over some of the background on how we arrived at where we are. It has been a long process. A draft zoning ordinance was made available to the public in May of last year, and staff has spent the summer revising that draft based on feedback received from the Board of County Commissioners, the Planning Commission, the public, and volunteer boards. And staff released the revised draft to the public on August 30th. And from that point forward, we had a public comment period that was opened and then closed on September the 27th. And public comments we received were forwarded to the commissioners for review prior to today's meeting. And I'll just add that on August 30, among the materials that were released to the public, they included a finalized version of that August 2024 draft. We also made available a red line version where all edits that had been made to the draft articles could be viewed. And we also made available a document that highlighted the changes that had been made and the major substantive differences between the previous draft and the most recent draft. The purpose of today's meeting is primarily to review changes that have been made to the draft and highlight some of those major differences between them, and also to give the commissioners the opportunity to discuss any of the public comments that were received. And we're going to start with a definition that has been revised in the August draft, and that is the definition of density. The definition of density has been revised and now states that density is the number of dwelling units permitted per the net acreage of a parcel as opposed to the gross acreage of a parcel, which is in line with the current policy. Net acreage is the number of acres of a parcel remaining after tidal wetlands, non-tidal wetlands, and state wetlands have been deducted from the gross acreage.
Will, can I ask you a question as you go?
Sure.
How come steep slope is not included in that?
So That's a good question. I think that that's a definition that we've had for net acreage for a long time. I don't know how long it's been exactly, but I think that's been the definition for a long time. So I think that that's just been the status quo on how density is calculated in the county for a long time. And I think that we're trying to just be consistent with our current policy there.
What would be the problem with adding that in?
Well, I don't know if you would describe it as a problem per se,
Okay.
but that would reduce the amount of residential density potential on a parcel potentially. That would be the effect of that.
Mhm.
What you're already getting when you're deducting, you're already getting a reduction when you deduct those wetlands. You know, the density cannot be located on those sensitive environmental features, and we're actually we're proposing to strengthen those protections, those protective buffers for sensitive environmental features like wetlands and steep slopes in the draft. So there are already protections in the draft, in the current ordinance, and we strengthened those protections in the draft to protect those types of sensitive environmental features. So really, if you're talking about including more things in the definition of what net acreage is, what you're, I think, asking for is a reduction in density, in effect.
You got it.
So that's
He took you
does,
the long way.
does that require any
He took you the long way
other
around, okay.
explanation?
But yeah, that's my point.
Okay.
So if I understand your response, can't build on steep slope, but steep slope can be used to calculate the net density.
Correct, yes. Yes, steep slopes are not deducted in the net acreage.
But the dwelling would still have its setback requirements from the steep slopes.
Correct, and we're strengthening those we're proposing to strengthen those buffers for new subdivisions in the draft.
Is there consideration of putting the steep slopes in there to reduce that net acreage? I guess that's what,
Something that's been discussed to date.
okay,
I think it's something that can be considered for the future.
because I think that's what a couple of us are asking. Thank you.
Are we gonna vote on that tonight? That recommendation?
I don't believe so.
Without a motion, we're certainly not.
I'd make a motion that we vote on that.
Rachel?
I'm sorry, Don. I think you'd have to make a motion fully. You're gonna be the motion maker.
Yeah. Make a motion that we leave the steep slopes in the calculation of the net acreage in a parcel.
Can you repeat that, please?
I don't know whether I can remember it. I'll make a motion that we keep the steep slopes as now in the calculation of the net acreage of a parcel.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that motion. So we keep the motion precisely as it is in front of us?
Precisely, Your Honor.
Is that all right by you, Commissioner Gadway? You understand it like that?
Okay, so as it's written on the
As
screen?
it's written.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, I understand that.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it so we can have some discussion on it, maybe. We can do that.
Okay. We have a second. Any opinions or discussions on it?
Well, I think I didn't quite catch who said it earlier down the table, but they said it very poignantly. You can't build on a steep slope. You have to have a setback from a steep slope.
Dale, yeah.
But yet, you're going to be able to take the steep slope into consideration for net acreage. Or not taking the consideration of the steep slope into the net acreage, which, to me, tells me that steep slope would fall into the same guidelines as the other items, tidal wetlands, non-tidal wetlands, state wetlands, to me that if those are unbuildable and steep slope is unbuildable, it would, to me, be the same thing. Or not the same thing, but have the same consideration.
Okay,
Can I just bring up one legal point?
Mr. Mattingly?
Rachel, what, is there guidance from Comar on this? And the only reason I bring it up is because if Comar says we have to do it this way, then we can only make it more restrictive. We can't make it less restrictive.
Not to my knowledge, but I would have to look into it. I do not know.
Colleen is at the microphone.
Colleen?
Colleen Brummett, environmental planner. We're on the same wavelength.
Great minds.
Yes. So wetlands are regulated under Comar, whereas steep slopes, I couldn't tell you specifics off the top of my head, but wetlands, as far as not being buildable, are part of Comar. They, at the state level, get a 25-foot buffer. We then apply a 50-foot buffer, but we're not even talking about buffers here. We're just talking about the wetlands themselves. So I don't know if this was before my time when the original definition was created, but I don't know if that was part of the mindset that went into it. Is the state already says you can't do this, so the county is also just going to go along and say you can't do it anyway. Does that make sense? Okay.
So for the attorney, we're perfectly fine legally adding in, being more restrictive by adding in steep slopes.
Absolutely, but once again, I think she stated that she doesn't know about steep slopes, a Comar reg. And the only reason I bring it up is because I believe there is a bunch of stuff on highly erodible soils at the state level. So that's the only reason I'm cautioning anyone here, is that we could very well pass all this and then it gets struck down anyway. So
I think
that's all.
a few other things to consider regarding between throwing steep slopes in the same category as wetlands. Wetlands are not nearly as widespread throughout the county as steep slopes are. You will find steep slopes on probably the majority of a lot of the lots in this county. And if you were to deduct steep slopes from the calculation, it would probably warrant a good number of parcels unbuildable by throwing that in there. So I think we just have to, I think it's something that we would want to take a look at and see what the impacts would be and how it would affect properties, making them buildable or unbuildable. And not that they don't have buildable area on the parcel themselves. They have a building envelope area where the lot would be, where a house could be placed. But, you stay away from the steep slopes on the property. But it could have a bigger impact than what we're just thinking about right now.
Yeah, can I raise just one other point? On the state level, when it comes to citing septic drainage fields, you actually have to get I think they call it a variance if it's greater than 25%. So while it may be permitted on the state level, this could have potentially, from what you're saying, a potential for disqualifying lots. Because you can't, according to this, you wouldn't be able to build, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've never really looked at before, so I think it's difficult to say without doing some investigation what the impacts would be if it were to be considered as adding it to the definition.
It would also depend on what land you're looking at. I mean, if you look at the Range Club, that ain't nothing but steep slopes.
Right,
Okay?
yeah.
It would not pass anything today that we've got in this process here. But then if you look at other lands, it's not that bad. So we don't want to not make sure we keep track of this because we've already messed up one area, and allowed building on a steep slope. Not I'm talking probably a couple thousand houses that have steep slopes. I mean, literally have no yard, have no backyard or no front yard, depending on where they're positioned. There was also a piece of property down there that has a steep slope in it that we've passed. And if I'm correct, the Lusby property included the steep slope, which is about 30 feet high. So I think we need to start paying attention to which way we're going.
So you're not talking about individual houses here. You're talking about the net acreage that would support the density, correct? So an example, 50 acres, 25 acres is wetlands, 12.5 acres is steep slope. That remaining 12.5 acres is would be the new net that you could build on.
Right, so if you were looking at an area that could do a major subdivision, it would drastically decrease the number of lots they could do on that parcel. But there's other instances where, you know, you have lots that are, you know, created that come in with a permit, and then, you know, depending on, you know, how it was platted, it would be an impact to that as well. So I just think there's a lot of different scenarios that could happen that we haven't looked at to be able to give you a good answer on how this would have other, you know, a greater impact on the entire county.
Mr. Chairman, I withdraw my motion if we offer the option to the staff that she's describing.
That sounds like a relevant idea. Is there any objections to that?
What was it again?
Withdraw this motion.
We withdraw the motion and ask the staff to give us an assessment of how this would impact, and while we're at it, perhaps the COMAR regulations on it too, because that's gonna.
I would definitely like to see more information and explanations. So I'd be very much in favor of that.
Okay, so we have a consensus there. We need anything else legally?
No, sir.
This-
thank you.
The seconder doesn't have to withdraw?
I second
he
for
just withdrew.
discussion.
Didn't he just, oh, and you asked for.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
We're good.
Yeah,
We're good.
technically,
Okay.
I withdraw my second.
I withdraw
That
my
was
second.
actually stated.
Second's withdrawn.
All right.
You're good.
Thank you, Commissioner Gadway.
Thank you, counsel.
You will.
Anytime I can screw up, I'm here for you.
And anytime any commissioner has a question, just feel free to interrupt. I don't
My month is not complete without interrupting you.
All right. We're going to keep moving here. We're going to go over the articles next that address the characteristics of the individual zoning districts, which are Articles 4 through 8. So first thing, we removed a maximum lot area requirement of 3 acres for clustered subdivisions in the Farm and Forest District and the Rural Community District. So essentially what that would mean is that as long as we're getting the required amount of open preserved space in the clustered subdivision, you can create a 4 or 5 acre lot if you so desire. You won't be restricted from the ordinance by doing so. We're more concerned about getting that open space. We also removed setback requirements that were more restrictive for lots over 3 acres in the Farm and Forest District, Rural Community District, and the Rural Neighborhood District. We thought that these increased setback requirements for properties over 3 acres in size would potentially disincentivize their creation and allows for more uniformity within the district and community in terms of setback requirements. We increased the minimum lot area requirements in the Rural Neighborhood District and in the Residential District, if not connected to sewer, from 30,000 square feet to 1 acre. And transfer zone density has been reduced in the Residential District from 4 dwelling units per acre down to 1 dwelling unit per acre. And the draft zoning map has also been updated. What we're looking at here is the south end of the county. And what has changed as compared with the previous draft map is that the heavy industrial I-2 district has been expanded to the Appeal Landfill and Solomon's Wastewater Treatment Plant, which was light industrial district in the previous draft zoning map, as well as the surrounding parcels, which were rural community district previously. And the heavy industrial district has also been expanded to the parcel directly south of the Calvert Cliffs Nuclear Power Plant, which is a parcel under current zoning is split between light industrial and farm and forest. And there are also been some revisions made to the uses, both permitted and not permitted, in that heavy industrial district, which we'll cover on another slide a little further into the presentation.
I got a question. There's another semi-dark blue, I guess, down there next to the light blue, coming down right next to the Lusby Town Center.
South of Southern Connector.
Well, nope, north and south. So you got a light blue north and a different color blue south.
So those are the other, I believe if I'm understanding you correctly, there are two other industrial districts. We have a light industrial district. That is the slightly lighter shade of blue on the map.
And that's
And then the lightest shade of blue is the industrial mixed-use district.
I believe those two are pre-existing, correct?
Those are unchanged versus
Those are unchanged,
the
yeah,
last
just-
draft.
Right.
So that's one.
And a couple changes that were made to Article 17, transferable development rights, that we'd like to highlight. We added Table 17-1, residential density and minimum lot sizes for town centers. We added that to the draft. And in all town centers, any district with a permitted residential density over 4 dwelling units per acre currently has been reduced to a maximum of 4 dwelling units per acre in the draft. And Section 17-2A now states that one transferable development right is allocated per net acre of land within an APD. And that's a change from the current policy in which TDRs are allocated based off gross acreage, despite the fact that residential density is calculated based off net acreage.
Can I ask a question? Which, that only brings up in my mind. We have a gross number of TDRs, I've heard it here, and that isn't relevant to what I'm saying, but are we backing ourselves into a position where the only purchaser will be the county? And we've already increased the cost of TDRs, the commissioners have. I think, what are we up to now, $4,000? $6,000. The last time I think they were sold publicly, they were about $2,800. Is this a backdoor tax increase that the commissioners have figured out to use through the zoning ordinance? I mean, I know you can't answer that, it's rhetorical, but you begin to wonder, we're slowly whittling it down, but somebody is gonna pay to run the county, to provide services that we need, and it would seem to me that it's pretty obvious that we're moving in a direction to let homeowners get big tax increases in order to provide more spaces that we have been willing to, open spaces that we've been willing to accept in the past for development. That's a general view that I have. If I'm wrong, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I think that leadership in the county needs to decide what the priorities are, what direction they want to go in, and I think that there are probably other avenues for tax revenue that leadership is looking at.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out that government's still going to cost, and the cost of government is going to be what it's going to be, and I don't want to preach on this, but it would seem to me we are, in our zeal to have no growth, because we've already done that with the large town centers. We've virtually eliminated any large growth there. And I think, well, okay, it's fine. I like to live in a place where nobody hardly lives, but wait a minute. Who pays the bills? Oh. And we end up with our demographics, what they are, you have a lot of people, unfortunately, in my age phalanx. So it would seem to me, when I look down the road, and I'm probably wrong, but when I look down the road, I see a place, if the dream comes true that some of us have, it'll be a place where there will be no growth, where there will be large lots, even though we say we want water and sewer, public water and sewer in some place. Be no need for it, because we'll have plenty of room for fields for sewer. And then I think at the bottom of the line, like everything, there's always a net cost. And who's going to pay it? And in this dream world, I think it's you and me and the other homeowners. I think that's unfortunate, and that's the direction that I see undergirding all of this. I don't expect a response, but it's a feeling that I see as I read all this. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Howell.
Before I move on from this slide, I just wanted to point out, so when we talked about revising the definition of net acreage and what the possible, reverberating consequences of that might be, there's an example of a potential consequence, another instance of where net acreage comes up. So something to think about. And a number of revisions have been made to the uses article, and we have several slides to cover them. Starting with detached accessory dwellings, the maximum square footage of gross floor area permitted has been increased from 1,200 square feet to 1,500 square feet. Townhouse, quadruplex, and triplex dwellings are no longer permitted in the residential district. Short-term rental has been removed from the list of uses on the use table, meaning the status quo of not requiring a use permit for short-term rentals would continue. For tenant homes, the minimum acreage required has been reduced from 50 acres to 25 acres. And manufactured homes on an individual lot or parcel is now permitted with conditions in the Rural Neighborhood District, Waterfront Community District, and Residential District. And that change was made due to the passage of the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act, which requires local jurisdictions to permit manufactured housing in zones that allow single-family residential uses. And just another point there, we have a very specific definition of manufactured homes. We're not talking about mobile homes. And last bullet, home occupation class 1 has been removed and is no longer a use listed on the use chart. Home occupation class 1 is a home occupation where there are no on-site appointments or clients and no employees that aren't permanent residents of the dwelling. So what that essentially means is that unless your home occupation involves clients coming to the house or includes employees that aren't permanent residents of the house, you'll no longer be required to have approval of a use permit before we sign off on a business license, as is currently required. So this is a change that helps simplify and streamline the process for small businesses operating out of homes, while still allowing for the department to review the type of home occupations that might have more of an impact on a community. And moving forward, farmers market is now a permitted use in the Rural Community District, Rural Neighborhood District, Waterfront Community District, and Residential District, with the condition that the farmers market be located, if it is located in a permanent structure, the footprint of the structure is limited to 1,500 square feet. Agricultural, seafood, and livestock processing is now permitted in the Farm and Forest District, Rural Community District, Rural Neighborhood District, and Residential District on farm properties, provided the farm has received all required state licenses and approvals. And public events and public assemblies on farmland is now a permitted special exception use with conditions in the Rural Community District, Rural Neighborhood District, and Residential District, and the number of events permitted per year has been increased from 2 to 12. And on this slide, we'll address some of the changes that have been made to the industrial districts and town centers. Uses like asphalt plant and heavy manufacturing and/or assembly are no longer permitted in the heavy industrial district. Adult enterprises is no longer permitted in the industrial mixed-use district or anywhere else in the county. Data center has been added to the use chart, and it is permitted as a special exception use with conditions in the heavy industrial district. A reminder for anyone not aware, a special exception use means that the proposal requires Board of Appeals approval, and the condition for this use is that the data center be set back 200 feet from a minimum of 200 feet from all property lines, and 500 feet from any lot or parcel with a residential building or active residential building permit, except for adjacent properties under common ownership.
Will, would you explain what a data center is?
Well, I've got a specific definition. Would you like to go there? So the definition we have for data center is an establishment engaging in the storage, management, processing, and/or transmission of digital data and housing computer and/or network equipment, systems, servers, and appliances, and other associated components related to digital data operations. And that's a definition where we didn't reinvent the wheel. That's a definition that we took from Loudoun County, which
What
is.
does it take to run a data center?
I think that's a complicated question. I think that there's been a lot of evolution in the data center world over the last decade or so.
So the reason I'm going here, most of the public comment you've received recently has been regarding data center. And I don't know enough about data centers to be able to form any opinion whatsoever. It sounds like they consume an enormous amount of power.
They do.
Correct.
And possibly consume or create an enormous amount of wastewater.
Correct.
My understanding is that I think that a lot of water is used in order to cool the equipment.
Can you repeat that, Will?
There's a good amount of water used to cool the equipment in data centers. I think in the past, air conditioners were used, but the problem with that is noise. And so I think that my understanding is that the data centers that are coming, that are being constructed today are typically cooled using water.
It would be nice to have someone present to us the demands a data center would place on our utilities. And this is just a suggestion, but it may be good to put together a commission to report on the pros and cons of a data center.
Mary Beth Cook, Director of Planning and Zoning. There's been a lot of discussion internally, maybe not with the staff that's sitting before you this evening. I do know that there are just the topics that you brought up this evening coming soon. I can't make any announcements, but the commissioners have all of the same questions and they are bringing in subject matter experts. So keep your eye on their agenda.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
Okay, thank you, Mary. And before we move on to the next slide, just wanted to mention, commercial pier has now been added as a special exception use in the C4 sub-area. Solomon's Town Center and drive-through facilities are now permitted with conditions in the Village Commercial District of Lusby Town Center in the draft.
Will, quick question in reference to heavy industrial or light or medium industrial. What, in your opinion, I don't know if this is already established or not, but a industrial level composting facility to produce compost on a industrial scale, would that be heavy industrial?
I would have to consult our use chart
Okay.
to take a look at that. So I don't have an exact
And the reason why I
precise
ask
answer
is
for you.
because couple years ago, I was approached by a very well-known national organization that's pro-environment that wanted to look at putting an industrial composting facility in Calvert. And there is not one anywhere in this region in Maryland, and there was possible benefits to that. So I happened to be wondering about that, environmental benefits.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving forward to accessory structures and uses. This article has been revised to increase the threshold for when a building permit is required for an accessory structure from 150 feet increased to 200 feet. And in regards to the keeping of chickens and poultry, conditions for non-farm properties under 3 acres in size, such as limits on the number of chickens allowed, the prohibition on keeping roosters, peacocks, and guinea fowl, and the prohibition on the slaughtering of poultry on site have been removed from the draft. And moving on to natural resources, Article 21, and just a reminder, this article pertains to areas outside of the critical area. And so the NRPA 1, which includes stronger protective buffers from sensitive environmental features like wetlands, streams, and steep slopes, now applies to environmental features on parcels, lots, outlots, residue, and open space created following the adoption of the updated zoning ordinance, both inside and outside of town centers. And in the previous draft, those stronger protective buffers only applied outside of town centers. And marine and water dependent facilities, section 23-2 has been revised to allow for encroachments on the harbor line through approval of a variance by the Board of Appeals. And for private piers, the limit on the number of slips permitted has been raised from 2 to 4. Currently 2 slips are permitted, and an additional 2 are allowed with special exception approval from the Board of Appeals. And site development and design standards, Article 25. The provisions which allowed for planned unit developments in the previous draft has been removed, but at the work session held last week with the BOCC, we received direction to include what we're calling a community benefit agreement, which would function in a similar way to a planned unit development, with the notable difference that residential uses cannot be included in the proposal. It would be for commercial, industrial, and institutional uses only. And the maximum height permitted in the heavy industrial I-2 district has been increased to 75 feet with the condition that the building be set back a distance double the height of the building from all property lines except for adjacent properties under common ownership. And in the current ordinance, the maximum height permitted in industrial districts is 50 feet.
75 feet is how many stories?
Is it like 7? I think 7 or 8.
Just want to make sure.
6 plus a roof,
Sure.
possibly.
Moving on to parking, Article 27. The following provision has been added to the draft. Upon written application, the zoning officer may reduce the minimum parking requirements of this article if the applicant demonstrates that the facility to be served would not require in its day-to-day operation a full a full complement of parking. The application shall be accompanied by a parking needs study that includes an estimate of the parking needs for the use, a thorough explanation of the basis for the estimate, any data used in calculating the estimate, including parking generation studies, and previous experience with similar uses, and an explanation of any other relevant considerations, such as availability of commercial or public parking areas. And this replaces the following provision, which has been removed from the draft. The parking requirements for non-residential uses may be reduced up to 15%, which currently can be achieved through an through administrative variance approval.
Thank you.
And final slide, provisions which would have required the installation of electric vehicle charging stations and parking facilities that require 50 or more spaces have been removed and replaced with the current policy, which is an incentive to reduce the number of required parking spaces by 2 spaces if the electric vehicle charging stations are installed in parking facilities that require 50 or more spaces. And the provisions addressing electronic message centers have also been revised to allow places of worship with reader boards in existence as of the adoption of the updated zoning ordinance to replace those reader boards with electronic message centers in any district. So that concludes the slides that we had prepared for today. So at this time, I believe staff requests that the commissioners, if they have any further topics that they'd like to bring up those topics. If they'd like to discuss any other comments received from the public, we could do that as well. Okay, good, and that December 17th date has been updated, so that's good to see.
Thank you, Will. Commissioners, questions, comments? Yeah, no, you've been doing great as we go along. We're all set, nothing we have to go back to?
I'd like to thank the individuals working on this, everybody. Thank you for listening to the public and to our comments previously and incorporating those items in. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestions.
Thank you, folks. We appreciate your help.
Thank you.
That moves us on to item 11 on the agenda, items of interest. Before you, planning commissioners, you have the site plan and subdivision list for your information only. Do you have any questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none, that moves us on to item 12, public comment. Planning commissioners will accommodate public comment in person, by telephone, or virtually. Individuals should call in advance of participating by telephone. They should call 301-715-8592, and the meeting ID number is 858-5579-4151. And if you're asked for a passcode, please hit the #. Speakers, whether in person or participating by telephone or virtually, will be limited to 2 minutes as an individual and 5 minutes if you're representing a group or organization. We'll take in-person comment first, and if anybody online wishes to speak, please raise your hand and you will be called upon. Mr. Burry?
David Berry, Chesapeake Beach, speaking for myself. There are some additional changes in the proposed zoning ordinance that I think were not covered by this evening's brief. There is upzoning that is proposed in the regions adjoining Prince Frederick, North Beach, Chesapeake Beach, Dunkirk, Owings, Huntingtown, and St. Leonard that result in sharp increases in permitted residential development. With TDRs, formerly, some of the districts around these town centers had permitted densities of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. That has now been proposed to 1 dwelling unit per 1 acre. Why was this not discussed by planning and zoning? And let me add another thing, is that it looks, if I read the regulations right, the proposed regulations, that there has been a change in how rural community districts, or commercial districts are proposed, that they can be expanded, and that there be some increased uses permitted. So again, I would encourage a very close reading of the changes within the draft, and would like to see some additional calculations by planning and zoning with these increased residential growth permitted uses. Just how much increased residential growth are we talking about? What are the impacts to infrastructure, including highways, intersections? And what is the impact to the county budget? The last calculations I've seen are that with each increased residence, there is an increase in the county budget net of $2,000. So if the intent is to grow our way out of budget problems, increased residential growth actually will have the opposite effect. So please take a very, very close look at the additional language in the zoning ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
I would. Oh, no, please, if you're ready, go ahead, because I don't have to go get there yet. You're not ready?
Can I, just a moment of clarification, you're not ready to speak, Bob?
Yeah, Bob.
I know, Bob, come on, Bob.
I'll just accept it, I'll accept it.
All right. So, my name is Teresa Ruhlman. I think you guys know me, but I was one of the people that wrote in. And I think as you talk about having your SMEs come in, your subject matter experts, could you please refer to my letter and ask those questions that I put on there? How much water is it gonna take? It's roughly 455,000 gallons of water a day to cool a data center, depending on its size. I know I only have 2 minutes, so that's a big concern. Where are you getting this water? Our aquifer can't handle that. Yes, it's great revenue, it's great tax, but have we done a full cost analysis? Have we looked at down the road when this thing shuts down, we're gonna be left with this terrible town? I mean, I'm all for not paying more taxes, obviously, but can we come up with something that works? That's a lot of water. Our aquifers cannot handle that. Where are the lithium batteries going? Our landfill's not gonna take them. They can't be stored there. Obviously, you're gonna get the power from the nuke plant, we all know that. Are you gonna use diesel for backup? How's that getting piped in? And then where are the battery, again, the batteries and the sound. If you guys ever been near a data center, I work in one every day. Not to that scale, but it's loud. And it takes a lot of water. I'm just gonna throw the water thing out there a million times. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Estes?
My name is Bob Estes. I'm representing Friends of Hunting Creek, and I will not be talking about stormwater management today. But to piggyback on what was already said about the average cost in operating budget for a dwelling unit, $2,000 roughly average, and that was a fact. That was a number that was calculated by a previous employee of planning and zoning, I believe. But also, you're not losing as much as you think you are, because there's calculated values for undisturbed lands in terms of soaking up excess rain, soaking up pollutants, not to mention recreation and quite a few other benefits, and it's a significant amount of money. So be a little careful about saying, oh, we're getting nothing from this, because you are. Sometimes you don't have to spend money on stormwater management. I did say that, sorry about that. But actually what I'm here to talk to you about is a talk I heard today on data centers. And I need to warn you guys, get smart about it quick, because these are very technical and systems related, and they have huge complexity. And no two are necessarily the same. It used to be that these data centers were roughly 20,000 square feet. Now the average for the mega ones is 200 to 500,000 square feet. You know, your average, like Fox Run is, say, 60,000, to give you some ideas. But in 2019, because of AI, there used to be a slope in raising of energy usage about like this. In 2019, it went like this. So energy is a huge thing, and water pretty much follows along with that. Like she said, water is hard to come by. It's not just aquifers, there's other ways of doing it, but the devil's in the details on how you do this. And these are big companies. They're going to come down hard. They're going to try to get the best deal, and if you won't do it, actually one of the speakers said, these guys will dictate to you what the design's going to be, or they're out of there. And she actually called them bullies, if you will, and this is a PhD in the subject area. So, you know, in terms of land uses, it generally raises the cost of land, which is good for some people and not so good for others. And of course, water, millions of gallons, like she said. Electricity, now this is an interesting one. They will buy the electricity for 10 years, the entire capacity, and guess who doesn't get to develop? That's everybody else, because there's not enough capacity in electricity to have another, you know, I guess some sort of a commercial unit, probably even developments of housing. So that's something to be looked at. There's a lack of federal, state, and regional regulations, so it's basically the Wild West or the gold rush. And that's part of the reason they're all rushing in to do this before they get the regulations, sensible regulations, not regulations that, so that everybody is playing on the same field with the same definitions. But that's not happening right now. And what they were also saying, rural locations have, I guess, the worst possible impacts, because they have a tendency to be more sensitive, and they're rural for a reason. And they have a tendency to not have the horsepower and experts that the non-rural and urban centers do. So, and I can give you some. You can actually look at some of these presentations, and if any of you want, you know how to find me, or some of you all do, and that's good enough probably. I'm not giving you my address though. But anyway. Anyway, I'm just urging you all to start dipping your toe in there, because these are extremely complex. They could be financially a boon if done properly, but the devil and all of his angels are in the details. So it's time to get started on that education. And I like to hear. I hope I get invited too, because I want to hear as much about that too. Sounds good. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? Okay, Commissioners, we do not have anybody online, so that brings us to item 13, adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? We stand adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.